2015, 2016, which was an eye-opener for everybody. But I think that we were all such conscious, forward-thinking women that we were unconscious.
Yes.
Would you agree? Would everybody agree with that?
No.
Maria, would you agree? We were all so, see, that's the professor in me, sorry. We were all so conscious in 2016 that we were unconscious. Right? Like conscious. We thought that we were the women that were forward-thinking and were so progressive and open-minded and all those things that we didn't really look around. We were pretty unconscious about what was going on. Okay, and that's great. No, that's good. But I'm talking, so in general speaking, a lot of people were feeling like they didn't have their eyes wide open enough, okay? Where I was in 2016 was my mom had died at the beginning of the year. My oldest daughter was off getting married to a young Navy doctor. My youngest daughter was having pregnancy issues, and I just was in my own head. And I left my largest client and decided that I would work on a book called the Social Responsibility Toolkit, because what I was seeing as corporate counsel was that a lot of the small companies were not getting a chance to play with the big guys because they didn't have social impact programs in place. They might not have green initiatives, they might not have diversity initiatives, they might not have compliance issues, and they didn't have the staff, lawyers, marketing people, to implement that kind of stuff. And so they were not getting the contracts with the Marathons or the Exxons or Dell or universities. And in many cases, they just lied because they were hungry. So they would go ahead and say they had all that. And then when we had the big economic downturn a few years ago, a lot of it as a result of the oil and gas industry, the way they started getting rid of their suppliers and their vendors was to do an audit and then say, okay, you don't have any of these programs, you're out of here. So that caused a lot of consternation for me because I felt like the playing field was not equal. So I started creating an online program and started working on a book to give all these small to medium-sized companies the tools that they would need to have a competitive edge in today's marketplace. And I was madly working away on my corporate book when I started getting phone calls from clueless people. We've all talked about it. I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I was getting phone calls from strangers, and I wasn't really sure why they were calling me. Hello, I'm Mary. I just moved here from wherever, and so-and-so told me to call you. I don't want to do what I used to do. Oh, what would you like to do? Well, I want to do something that makes my heart feel good, but I need to make money. What would you like to do? I don't know. What are you interested in? I don't know. I got 4 phone calls in 4 days. And then I believe in signs, so I closed the laptop and said, okay, so much for the corporate thing. I need to figure out why I'm getting all these clueless people calling me. And what became pretty apparent to me, I kind of scooped them all up and said, let's do a workshop together. I think I can help you. Because I did have my nonprofit that did microfinance projects, so I have the heart of a social entrepreneur, and I have the business background. I've practiced law 40 years. And so I thought, well, I think I can help. And I gathered up all these people. And what I found out, and what I found out since, and I'm sure you run across this every day, is that everyone is on such digital overload right now of bad news. It's like the bad news newsletter day after day, hour after hour. It's not even day after day, hour after hour. And it's not just politics, right? It's climate things, it's catastrophes, it's just, you just can't get a break. So it feels like what's happened is we've gone from apathy to paralysis. So whereas maybe there was apathy before this election, it's covered. And it wasn't. We've gone to paralysis like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do. I want to help. So what I'm getting from all these people is I want to help, but it's too big. I can't solve global poverty. I can't solve the immigration issues. I don't even know where to begin. So we started down a path together. And we began to look at really what's going on in the market as well out there. And honestly, I believe this is a message of hope in a state of chaos right now. The folks that were showing up I thought it was important that we go back and look at what their values are first, right? Not the skill sets and the education that you have, because we have street smarts and we have education, we have skill sets. But what are the things that are most meaningful to you, right? And you only know that from life experiences, and we each have a different life experience. So we work through maybe something that happened at birth and then high school, then college or first job or whatever. Come up with a value word, why it's meaningful to you, so that when somebody asks you, why you actually have a story. What's important to you? Honesty, integrity? No. What's important to you? So that you can attach. And then once you figure out what your values are, not those words that we all put all over our resumes or our bios that we just snagged because someone else thought they would be cool words, but words that were really from our experience, then we can begin to look at who else has the same values, who's our tribe. Because you have a better chance of success going to a company with the same values as yours, that you'll stay, a better chance of success starting a business if you're hiring people with the same values. But we have to go back to the very basics and figure that out, right? So we begin to go through this process, and then we actually took in like, okay, now the very question that I asked you guys today was, what interests you and what bothers you? Because how do you get people unstuck? Right? They don't even know in many instances. This particular crowd, when you come to a conference like this, we're very motivated. We're here for a reason. A lot of us know exactly why we're here. But now we're talking about going from conscious and getting out of the unconscious to what is going on in the rest of the world right now. What are they feeling? What are they attached to? Not statistics that an intern brings to you when you're running for office. Oh, the statistics in this county say that everybody wants this. No, let's go talk to somebody. And if our young Girl Scouts were here, I would say, there's a whole bunch of lonely kids out there. Go talk to them. Actually ask them, what bothers you? Hear them. Because when you stood up just now and you said to each other, what bothers you? Someone heard you. One-on-one, someone heard what bothered you. Even if you may not talk to this person again, you might. I hope at the end you'll reconnect and continue the conversation, because we're missing that right now, right? So with this group, we wandered through this process of what's their values, how are they showing up online and offline? Do we show our values today on our LinkedIn profiles? Do we actually weave those words in and out? Or do we use the words that's in the job description or what we think other people say? I actually had one woman come up to me and say, my God, Linda, I put 3 of my words in there, and she said, it's the first time I'm 50 years old that it's my authentic me. I had another woman the other day who has a clothing design business, and she's trying to bring in some sustainability measures, and she had 3 words of her value words. She said, well, I thought I'd experiment today, and I went to a meeting with my suppliers, and I actually used the words that were important to me, and she said 3 of them stopped me and said, my God, that we feel the same way, we want to work with you. No one can see that right now because we're not talking about the things that are truly important to us personally, all right? And somehow we need to be asking everybody, listening to them, not preaching at them, not telling them what they should believe in, but actually really trying to figure out what they believe in so that we can navigate this course and begin to maybe move it around. By the time we got through Solutionaires, this last group of women, I'm actually working with groups of people. This one happens to have 8 women. We're wrapping up an 8-week series. And they've all come forward, and the things that they're working on that will make a difference in the world are actually as a result of something that personally happened to them. So one woman, although she has a cabinet business, she's very interested in working with women that have been abused. Well, halfway through, we find out that her first husband and the father of her child is serving 3 lifetime sentences, the longest sentence in Texas for physical abuse to her and that baby, unborn baby at the time. So her life now, she wants to begin to create an actual social impact piece around some of the work she wants to do. Another of the women got addicted to painkillers, and her husband's painkillers or something like that, and then she lost her children, lost her marriage, lost everything. When she finally got clean, they remarried, she got her family back, so there's a good story there. She now wants to work in the addiction space as well and help other people who have done this. So all these people that are wandering in and out have a life story that complements what they want to do in terms of giving back on this planet. My story when I look at it and I look at the actual journal of my life, I moved to Peru when I was 5 years old. I saw extreme poverty from the time I was a kindergartner. And we were in Peru 6 years. We were in Mexico City for a couple of years. Ultimately, we came back to the United States. At 16, I wanted to be a social worker. I mean, I really wanted to go help all those people. So my dad, I think he was in cahoots with Mrs. Smith down the street, because he sent me to talk to Mrs. Smith about being a social worker. And of course, when I came back, I didn't want to be a social worker anymore. Didn't sound as cool anymore to me. He was very intent on his two girls either going to law school or my sister's an English professor, but finding something that they could sustain themselves. I ultimately ended up as a single mother with two girls, then glad I had a finance degree and a law degree, of course. But I ended up working and starting an organization that helps very poor women in developing nations, Tanzania, Zambia, Ghana, a number of other countries, find ways that they can have a business. And I realized when I started that at, 50, whenever I started that, right? I finally had the tools, right? Now I was a lawyer and I had a finance background and I had been a single mother and I knew what it was like to wake up in the middle of the night and not know where the next meal is going to come from, where that next dollar is going to come from, how you're going to raise those two babies, because I had mine alone at 10 months and 4. And I really got it. And so my life path had circled back around from the kindergartner that started witnessing that to a 50-year-old who now actually could come back into that space and work in that space. And I think all of us, every single person in this room has a life path, if we really study it, that will tell us the things that are meaningful to us, the people that impacted us along the way. And although we're always so busy looking forward, sometimes it's really great to look backwards and see what we can bring forward. What I've noticed from Solutionaries what happened was, quite frankly, it turned out to be an accidental book, because I did all these worksheets and ran all these ladies through a mastermind, and then I got through and I'd accidentally written a book. So it got published. And so now we're doing workshops and continuing this work of helping people figure out. I don't use the word purpose or passion because I think they're daunting. I mean, and not only that, what if you only had one purpose or passion? You would just really feel horrible if you never figured out what it was. We have lots of purposes and passions, right? So I continue to do this work now, but I'm now circling it back to the social responsibility toolkit with corporations, because what I've realized is we're asking our corporations to step in and pitch in. We're asking our nonprofits to do stuff. And a corporation is just a piece of paper that someone filed at the Secretary of State's office. It's nothing. It's just a piece of paper that we attribute some mythological grandeur to it. It's the people that make up the corporation that count. So if all the people in the corporation can identify the values that are important to them, the corporation can begin to identify where it fits in. And somewhere along the way, there's this breakdown that we've made corporations and businesses actually look like some behemoth kind of false entity, but it's not. It's a piece of paper. That's it. The same thing for nonprofits and all the other organizations. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm feeling pretty good about what's going on out there, because there's a really big shift right now out in the social impact space. The sectors are merging, which is really, really interesting to watch. Because transparency has become the key word, look at the news every day. People are talking about this idea of transparency in one way or the other, right? For-profits are having to go, oh my God, the not-for-profits can't fix all the social problems in the world, so we're going to have to go do it. But we can't just throw money at it. We're going to actually have to go help. And the not-for-profits are waking up going, oh my God, we don't have enough money more. We're going to have to generate revenue. So they're sort of beginning to merge up, right? And then the citizens, of course, we're seeing, thank God, the finger's in the dike. Every time something happens, we've got citizens, women marching, judges are putting stops to things. This apathy level is finally beginning to break up and crumble up. And as crazy as it is, thank God, right? Thank God, is all I can say. So my challenge for each of you guys, really for everyone I talk to and for myself every day here, is to kind of step way back and perhaps figure out, begin to talk to people and ask them, what's important to you? What's the most important thing to you? And when they tell you, perhaps you're not trying to change their mind, Perhaps what you're trying to do is link them to somebody else that's in that tribe, because there's strength in numbers, and we have plenty to fix out there, right? I look at civic re-engagement as also being socially responsible human beings who want to change the world for a better way. And they have to step out and they have to do it. Not just about, for me, it's probably different than Sharon's, but for me, it's not just about the voting or just about, because if they don't understand what's important to them, they'll just be following someone else's vote. It will never settle with their heart. My best friend told me years ago she adopted her little boy from Bangladesh at an orphanage, and I took my kids over and we all worked in Nepal washing their clothes on the rocks with all the other kids and everything, and she said she tried for years to make sure that everybody was very invested, foster parents with all the kids at the orphanage and stuff like that, and she said, Linda, you need to understand, everybody has their own passion. Just because it's mine doesn't make it yours. And so it's very hard to engage people that can't connect with your story. But it's okay if you can help them connect with theirs. And I wanted to leave you with one quote, because we all have something very fun to do tonight I'm excited about. But I was looking at this earlier, and it was something that, I love Maya Angelou, of course, who doesn't? And she said, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. So, you know, I would just ask that maybe you continue to have the dialogue with the person that you had a little bit ago and find out more about what's interesting to them and back and forth and how you can support them. Even if there's one connection that you can make for them or one idea that you can give them, help them go find the thing that's important to them, because then they'll be right there with you as you walk on your path too. It breeds loyalty as well. So that's my talk, you guys. Are there any questions? Any questions about the steps and solutionaries, or, yeah?
How do you help women that are in positions of authority in large corporations bring that message to their companies?
You know, it's interesting too, because two of the women that are in the group right now, one is the general counsel of Beck Construction, which is huge. Another one is CEO of the largest cable company in Houston. And they are really understanding the idea that as leaders, there's a trickle down. We've seen it in all of the corporations, right? I mean, you see it in government and corporations everywhere else. The leader commands the values of the entity. I mean, it's a push down, right? So when they can really understand what's meaningful to them, not something that they just adopted in the corporation because there was some crazy pillar out there that's in the kitchen, like how many of us go to the kitchens in the corporations and they have the values? And you're like, okay, that's great, but you don't really relate to it. But once the leaders can really identify the values, they can then answer the question, why me? Right? Just like, and they teach the next layer down and the next layer down for them to be able to say, why me, on the values. And then it becomes authentic. I was explaining to someone recently, I gave a talk at a job club in Austin, and these guys were like, well, we don't understand how we're supposed to tell our story. And I said, well, on an interview, right? And I said, well, here's the deal. I can walk in and I can say, I can save you $500,000 a year. I'll mentor 20 people. I'll do X, Y, Z, all the things that they actually had in their job description. Two different people can do that. And one of them can say, and by the way, when I was a kid, I fell in love with X, Y, Z about your product. And it absolutely changed my life, and I'm committed to you. Who's getting the job? Right? Because they related it to a story about themselves that showed what their value was. I guarantee you that's the person getting the job, not the one that just quoted what was in the job description. So in answer to that, the leaders have to also take their own personal stories in and make it okay for everybody else to have the story too. Yeah?
On that note, when you were talking about sort of weaving your values into your resume or LinkedIn, that really resonated with me. I think one of the most vulnerable positions you can be in is when you're in a job search and you are sort of, because you're taught to tailor your resume or cover letter to a job description. I felt like I was twisting myself into a pretzel every time I applied to a job. So I love what you're saying, but can you
Yes, and actually, now that you mention that, and because I'm holding all this stuff, I have got a worksheet that's got 24 experiences on it. It's where you can go in and you can think about it yourself and write your story down, and then you actually come up with one word that's a positive word. For example, I work with some women at British Petroleum and did this workshop for them, and I remember one woman said to me, and it was during the spill out in the Gulf when everybody was very depressed anyway, she goes, well, I learned never to trust again. I was like, can we reframe that word? That may not get you a really great job if you have to go. So we reframed it to, I am discerning. And I actually would like to hire somebody that's discerning, right? So the hard part is actually, making sure that your word gets really narrow. I had another woman recently I was working with, and she said, oh, one of my words is I like team. Unfortunately, I had a 2-hour drive back to Austin from Houston. I was like, okay, well, let's peel the onion. What is it you like about team? Well, I just like to help, and I said, and you like to be helped, right? So could we say that you are supportive and you like to support? There's a yin-yang here, right, on these values. Generally we want to give out what we get back, right? I want to hire someone that is both supportive and needs my support. I mean, so you begin to throw those words in. I had a little bit of a difficult time on someone's LinkedIn with humble and faithful on a business LinkedIn, but those were her words. We found other words. She, for example, thought she was very adventurous, but no one else could see that she was